Well, if the National Professional Teachers Organisation of South Africa has its way, schooling will return to normal this year, as long as it's safe to do so, of course. The COVID-19 pandemic having forced many schools to close early and pupils having to attend classes on a rotational basis or even virtually. But vaccinologist Shabir Mahdi has told eNCA that the time has now come for schools to operate normally. So, does Naptosa's Basil Manuel agree? Basil, good morning to you. I imagine you echo that sentiment from the professor.
Good morning, Gareth. In fact, we will meet with the professor on Friday as the teacher union collective, all the teacher unions, because we also need to understand. We've always said we want to be led by the science. And Naptosa is desperately concerned by the learning losses. We are concerned by what teachers are telling us, particularly in those critical grades, like the foundation phase. One tends to focus on matric. But in our foundation phases, our learners haven't learned to read and write and do math as they ought to have by this stage in their learning career. And that is what is desperately worrying us, because those learners are going to be punished for the entire schooling career if we don't do something desperate about this now.
Because there are certain subjects. I have a few friends, Basil, I mean, I don't have children, but I have a few friends whose kids are now in that sort of grade 9, grade 10, grade 11 phase, and they're struggling with certain subjects. You can get away with, for example, English and some of the languages, but when you start getting to maths and some of these more scientific subjects, you need that one-on-one interaction. And the problem with that is that knock-on effect you're talking about is in a couple of years' time, that's going to affect your matric score, which is going to affect your ability to get into a good university.
Absolutely, Gareth. If you just picture the matric class of 2022, in grade 10 and grade 11, they've only seen 50% of the school day in a physical class. And that surely must have an impact. And don't sell yourself short by saying English would be okay. In fact, our history is showing us that English is not okay, and or languages are not okay as well. They are those critical building blocks which need regular reinforcement, and we are not able to do so. So our call is to say we need to get more learners back. We are painfully aware of the things that are militating against bringing every learner back, particularly in those chronically overcrowded schools. However, we've got to do something. We've had 2 years to do this, and we have to hold to account the people who have done nothing about it. We hear that COVID is going to be with us for a long time, and we're sitting with our arms folded. Coming rotationally to school is not working. It's not a long-term solution. So we have to find more creative ways of getting every learner back in class and in school.
Does Naptosa choose to share one of those creative ways, Basil?
Yes, I believe that we must first start with our junior primary classes. They can come back fully. They are smaller children. They're less infectious and less infected by COVID-19. Let's begin there. Let's look at our grade 8s, 9s, and 10s. Because our 10s, 11s, and 12s, they need to be back, because the building blocks, and we've seen, and I'm sure we are going to see the impact of that in the results that will be released today. Those are the first two things that we can do. Then we've got to look at either bringing mobiles into the schools, because we can't simply say schools are overcrowded. What are we doing about it? Mobiles are the quickest answer, but that planning should have happened already. But we are not going to say, because it hasn't happened, we must now just lament about it. Let's start now if we haven't done that already.
You do make a good point a little earlier, is that there's been 2 years of dealing with COVID-19 and education. While dealing with the issues of COVID-19 at schools, there could have been plans being put into place, or at least looked into, post-COVID, but it doesn't seem that's been done.
And I don't want to be unfair. There are many things that have been done. There are many plans that have improved. But when we have looked at school readiness now, there are schools complaining already that some of the COVID protocols, such as the non-pharmaceutical measures, where we need sanitizers, etc., are not being attended to as they ought to be. So schools haven't had delivery of those. And we are saying we can't be relaxing at this time. If we want learners back, let's be dogged in our approach to ensuring that schools are safe environments. The little things matter.
Let me ask a question on behalf of what I imagine could be some parents, could be more parents than I perhaps realize. The issue as well is the finances behind this. Many parents complaining on social media that they're still paying for full-time education, but their kids aren't getting the full-time education. There is a financial pinch on this as well, isn't there, Basil? Last question.
There certainly is. But, Gareth, we must also understand that the costs of running the school remain the same, whether you have 50 or 100 kids in the school. And that is the dilemma that schools and governing bodies are facing. But I agree, there too, we need to see a little more creative approaches because parents themselves are battling. But we mustn't imagine that because a child is at school for 50% of the time, that all the costs of running the school reduce by 50%.
Well, Basil, I appreciate your time. No doubts we're going to speak again later in the week, see how the first few days at school went back, and, of course, once those results come out as well. Always appreciate the views of Naptosa's Basil Manuel joining us here on the South African Morning.